beautiful soul. Welcome to my YouTube channel and my podcast. I'm Will Caminada, and I'm here to help you awaken, heal, and expand your consciousness. Today is a conversation episode, and I had the pleasure to talk to Cynthia Sue Larson. Cynthia is the best-selling author of several books, including Quantum Jumps, Reality Shifts, and High Energy Money. She's the founder of RealityShifters, first president of the International Mandela Effect Conference, managing director of Foundations of Mind, and the creator and host of Living the Quantum Dream podcast. She has been featured in numerous shows, including Gaia, the History Channel, Coast to Coast AM, One World with Deepak Chopra, and BBC. So Cynthia has these really awesome questions she reminds us to ask in every situation. How good can it get? So this is one of the biggest takeaways from this interview. And we talked about the quantum field, quantum jumps, reality shifts, jumping timelines, time acceleration, the Nelson Mandela effect. So it's a fascinating topic, and Cynthia is super knowledgeable and such a joy to be in presence with. So I hope that you enjoyed this episode, and if you do, please give that like, leave your comment, and share this episode with your friends. Enjoy. Hi, Cynthia. Thank you so much for being here on the show.
Well, thank you, Will, for having me on the show.
It's a pleasure. I'm excited to talk to you about quantum jumps, reality shifts. Just before we get into that, I'd love to know a little bit about your journey so far. And from your bio, I can see that you have a strong academic background, studying physics, right? But I also feel like your work is very much, today, I feel like it's very much spiritual, for a lack of a better word, because you also talk about parallel universes and consciousness. So did you always have that awareness that they are interconnected, or somewhere along the way you had what we call the spiritual awakening, and you just realized that, you know, you've been doing the work before even the awareness came to you?
A little bit of both. I was a lifelong mystic, so I was the child that could see things other people didn't see, and very sensitive to energies, and aware of just presences, so that things that didn't make sense to my parents or most adults. So it felt a bit odd, and I tried to fit in. I felt like studying physics was a way to be part of the mainstream and be not dismissing or ignoring this mystical true reality that I could feel, but I was doing my best to suppress it, shall we say, up till I got this Kundalini awakening. That happened when I was 32 years old, and it was a shock. So it just felt like so much energy rushing through me that I could no longer ignore some of the truths that I knew when I was quite young, and I'd been trying to push into a little box and like, let's not look at that. Like, and then suddenly I'm getting remote viewing information from distances that were proven to be true to me that made no sense. It was so real. I was just getting flooded with experiences and sensations and knowledge that was shocking. It felt deeply disturbing. You might think, oh, yay, Kundalini. Well, it's also very disruptive.
Yeah, a lot of people think that the spiritual awakening is just but then you're like, whoa.
Oh boy, it's rough. It's really rough. So it was difficult for my marriage, difficult for I couldn't really share what was really happening with most people I knew, because if I did, I would have to start every sentence with, I know this sounds like I'm crazy, because I know that. It's like, okay, this sounds nuts, but this just happened. Yes. So it was, I think people can relate to it now. I think maybe more people are having spiritual experiences for sure, and maybe more Kundalini experiences as well.
And how has this awakening impacted your work?
That really was the precipitation of the new direction I went in, because up until that point, I'd been basically kind of normal. I mean, I studied physics at UC Berkeley. Then I got an MBA degree. I'd been working at Citibank for many years. And then I took a leave of absence because I was a stay-at-home mom with 2 young daughters. It all sounds normal. And then boom, Kundalini awakening. So that was the beginning of a return for me to realizing that my deep mystical spiritual roots had always been with me. And the structure I'd built up to pretend that the world is material, realistic in nature, that's just a false structure. And it had to collapse. And when that collapses, that's the part that's painful for me for spiritual awakening, was everything I'd carefully constructed and like, okay, we all know that the material reality is real and that's all there is. And like blows apart, basically.
Beautiful. Thanks so much for sharing. I'd love for you to introduce to us the concept of quantum physics or quantum fields. I know it's a big topic, but just so that people can follow, what is the quantum field? And especially when it comes to time and space, how does that function in the quantum field?
Good questions. Well, the quantum part of physics is relatively a newcomer. It's been around for about 100 years, and it was initiated with the search for the ultimate building blocks of reality. So classical physics, Newtonian physics had really done a great job showing basic principles. Like when an apple falls out of a tree, we know this, Sir Isaac Newton would say gravity is a force in nature, not even one of the strongest forces, strangely. So quantum physics came into being to explore this idea of quanta, the undivisible smallest piece of energy or particle matter. And it started getting weird right away, I think, because what the physicists, I'm sure what they were looking for was that let's just take the classic Newtonian physics and let's see what things are really made of. And when they started looking, they would see things such as with the double slit experiment that indicated that these very indivisible particles, like an electron or a photon, when projected one at a time from a little, like a gun, firing them out one at a time through a double slit onto a screen, they get different results on the screen based on how they choose to observe the experiment. So right from the start, we're seeing either the particle is acting like a particle, and like if you were to fire like a paint gun at the screen, it would go splat like a particle would. Or they would get a result that looked like a diffraction pattern, like ripples of waves. Like if you throw 2 pebbles in the pond at the same time, you'll get waves of constructive interference where the waves are higher, and destructive where they cancel each other out, and it's, like a different pattern. So that diffraction pattern would show up on the screen, or the paintball pattern, completely based on how the scientists chose to observe what happened here. So it started looking, they did lots and more experiments, like, well, this can't be right. Let's chase this down further. Let's investigate further. But they found that when they looked more closely, it's like the particle knew exactly what's going on. And even current experiments showing that a decision now can affect the past is also proving to be true. So what we're seeing with the double slit experiment, which has been judged the most elegant experiment in all of science, is that there is something like an observer effect where the observational device changes the result. So we seem to have subjective reality. We also notice that particles are not pure particles, but they're energy as well. So a photon travels like a wave, or it can travel like a particle, either way. And it can be either or both. And it looks like everything is that way. And so right from the start, this field of physics kind of blew the lid off a lot of sacred cows, assumptions that we make, assumptions that we believe are always true. We knew they were assumptions, but now things like that we can be objective, that we can just be a scientist and study this experiment and not interfere with it. That's totally not true, because every observation changes the experiment. And lots of other assumptions were busted wide open too. Material reality doesn't look so material.
Yeah, it seems like it was a sort of an expansion from the 3D limited consciousness that we've always been aware of, right? It's expanding that perception that things are black and white, right? A, B.
Right.
And when it comes to time, we have that too, right? In 3D, we have this idea that time, with perception, that time is linear, past, present, and future, and that's how we've been, conditioned and living our lives, and it's real, right, for us to a certain extent. But when you start thinking about that quantum field, or even expanding your consciousness and your awareness, your perception of time, it doesn't seem like it's that linear anymore. Is this how it works? How does time function in the quantum field? And also maybe we can link to what is a quantum jump that you talk about.
Yes, well, how time operates in the quantum field is there's definitely this retrocausal effect or bicausal effect, where we can make a decision now, and of course it affects the future, but similarly, reciprocally, a decision made right now can affect our past, and it does, and we can prove that the future does affect the past. And this is a very quantum concept, so it's intrinsically part of this quantum realm, but it's not really a realm. It's really all of our world is quantum. And so what starts happening is, where we look at this idea of time, is that, like you said, it gets fluid. It's no longer that linear thing, and it's not even standard. We know for sure that time is experienced differently at different altitudes. So every experiencer is obviously having a different flow of time. And Einstein noticed that. He was looking at relativity and seeing that would be true for a space traveler to go on a journey at light speed and come back. And for him, he'd only been gone a day or two, but for everyone on Earth, they'd aged quite a bit, possibly quite a lot of years. So these kind of ideas are powerful and interesting. And then when you talk about what's a quantum jump, the technical term of a quantum jump involves going from one state, like we've seen the model of an atom with the electrons in orbit around the nucleus, and the electron can actually make a quantum jump to the next level of energy. And when this happens, when they make a jump to a higher or lower level, they can actually be seen visibly to the naked eye. And this was the first time that had been observed, was around the 1980s. So that's the technical term of a quantum jump. It would be a quantum particle actually instantly moving from one space to another, just boom, like flash, and it's jumped, emitting, in some cases, some sort of light that researchers can see. So it's actually visible. It's something that we can observe. It is real. Having said all this, then when I talk about a quantum jump, I'm also taking this concept from the so-called quantum realm and saying, okay, we are all the quantum realm. Therefore, we can all quantum jump. So we may not see it as often when my entire body makes a quantum jump. What do I mean by that? Where maybe I literally jump from being sick to being well. So I could jump from one possible reality where I have a cold to one where I don't, for example. And that's what I mean. And I mean literally, just in my traveling in the form of consciousness, I can be feeling like, wow, I'm really sick today. Maybe I should stay home, to the next moment feeling like I'm not sick at all. And there's nothing wrong.
And I think you mentioned this in one of your articles, that we may even do that without being aware that we're doing this. It's like the example you said, like I wake up, I'm feeling a little sick, but then you're like, no, I have this meeting that I have to, get through. And then you just get up and feel better, right? That would be
Right.
an example of a quantum jump,
It is.
even without the awareness that it is a quantum jump, right?
It's part of nature. So the way I present it is exactly that. Yes, we are familiar with it. And I also talk about how all of nature works this way. So one example in the plant world that I write about in Quantum Jumps is photosynthesis. And photosynthesis provides plants with the ability, the capacity to be something like 98% efficient in transporting from the moment a photon hits a leaf, taking that little bit of energy and depositing it where it needs to go. You might think that's not anything, but it's a big problem to solve. And we are still working on solving it with photovoltaic technologies, to solar cells and so forth, to make as good a use of solar energy as plants do. So that may not seem like much of a miracle, but it really is. And they are doing what's now been discovered as to be a quantum random walk. And that was discovered by a skeptic of the whole thing who said, there's no way we can see quantum processes in a warm, wet, messy environment. But yes, we can. So that research was conducted by a skeptic, and much to everyone's surprise, finding the truth that actually it looks like maybe all of nature operates according to solving problems almost instantaneously, as if we knew the answer at the back of the book. Mm-hmm. And that, what does that sound like? Again, it sounds like the future affecting the past. And it sounds like waking up and deciding, no, I can't be sick today. There's too much going on, and I'm really excited to do it. So then suddenly you feel fine, and you almost forget that you felt sick at all.
Yeah. Yeah. We have so much to learn from nature. And actually, we are part of the nature too, right? So it's with us already. How can we sort of become more intentional about it, and then making those quantum jumps with awareness and intention?
Right. One of my favorite ways is to embrace optimism and become much more optimistic than you might previously have been. Some people are very cynical, and they assume everything's going to be a disaster. And then and then you've got people who are skeptical. So they think it's probably going to be a little messed up. And then the so-called realists who say it's always exactly the same. Then you've got optimists who believe maybe it can be better. I like to ask, how good can it get, to guide things in that upward direction? And it happens subconsciously. Even if I do it when things are bad, like when it seems like a joke, like, are you kidding me? How good can things get? It's a really mess right now. Yes, let's ask it. I know it sounds crazy. Let's do it anyway. How good can this get?
Yeah, I love that. And I saw that that's like your question, how good can it get? I love that.
Yes. Well, what this does is it instantly invites the cosmos. We live in a participatory universe. Another gift from quantum physics brought to us by John Archibald Wheeler, the physicist. And he's the one that came up with the idea of black holes and tunneling and all of this. So he had the idea that we live in a participatory universe. What that means is when we ask nature a question, we get an answer. So based on the questions we're asking, and I love, how good can it get? How good can this get? How good can I get? Just wake up and say that. So this is an experiment you can conduct on yourself as a case study to see how is it different on the days you remember to do that compared to the days when maybe you don't remember to do that.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, and I've been doing this for the last few days. When I saw that, I usually wake up and say everything is working out for me, but then I add, how good can it get? And I actually like the power of the question too, because it's just like you're opening up yourself to all the possibilities that are available in the quantum field, right? Because there are infinite possibilities, right? Am I right to say that the quantum field has infinite possibilities, and we tap into, or we jump into one that we are more open to? Is that kind of?
Well, this is where I'll get a bit mystical, because I experience it in a couple of ways. One is that the setting of emotional vibration, you might call it, mood, and you can tell when you're in a good mood. So kind of like, I feel okay, and then feeling like, how good can it get? Feeling a little optimistic, feeling like super excited, feeling like it's going to be great. So you just kind of go up through gratitude and meditation and mindfulness and so forth, asking how good can it get. And then the other piece of it for best results in quantum jumping is your idea of who you are. And this is a very subconscious thing. We don't tend to think we can control it. We have assumptions about who we are. We think I'm just this body, but wait a minute, we know that's not true. So if you take a moment and sort of analyze and assess, who are you really? And part of who we are is the connections and relationships with everything and everyone we love. That is part of who we are, which makes us bigger than just ourselves. So we are the springtime as the spring begins. We are the season. We are the neighborhood, the environment, the nature. We are our family. So it's a re-awareness. So instead of feeling small, there's a chance to expand and to feel I am part of my relationships. I'm part of my home. We're in this together, and things start feeling better. When we collapse and we feel like I'm all alone, I've been ignored, I'm abandoned, whatever, like they don't understand me, nobody knows what I'm going through, et cetera, et cetera. It gets smaller and smaller. But when you go the other direction, it gets bigger and bigger. And so this sense of self and knowing that what you need is actually good for everyone, because you are working in service with everyone. These kind of ideas go together, but so it's the mood plus this expansion of self and being in service in a good way and being connected. So those two together for absolute best results. And to me, they're not measurables the way we tend to think within science. Like, can you measure this? I think optimism, you can kind of measure it. A sense of identity, I haven't yet seen a measurement for that, but I know that it's real and I can feel it. And you can hear it when you say something for yourself. Today's going to be fantastic. And you can feel that energy. You can sort of say it, and then your ears hear it, and then your body feels it. That will show you how big you are. So you're going to get some feedback and get a sense of that. That's a big factor in quantum jumping.
Love that. And this is when reality shifts.
Yes.
When we start living from that awareness. So I'd love for you to talk a little bit about reality shift, which is, I believe, a term that you coined or you came up with.
I did. Yeah, I came up with it. And also another author also came up with it in her book, Future Memory. My first edition of my book, Reality Shifts, mentions reality shifts, of course, 1999. And then PMH Atwater's book, Future Memory, has a chapter using the term exactly the same way, a whole chapter about reality shifts. I think that's not just an accident. I think when we see this kind of synchronicity, it shows us this is time for humanity to see the idea. It's ready. And in my book, Reality Shifts, I talked about what we now call the Mandela Effect. We don't call it the Hagman effect, because in my book, Reality Shifts, I describe a dead cat being alive again and the actor Larry Hagman being alive again. And I wasn't calling them the Hagman effect or the dead cat alive again effect. Sounds weird. But a number of years later, by 2009, this idea of the Mandela effect caught hold thanks to the internet and the quick ability for people to share information. And Nelson Mandela being the example at that time, who people were noticing. Some people remembered he'd passed away while he was incarcerated on Robben's Island in South Africa. And then other people might not have noticed that. So especially if you lived in South Africa, a lot of people say, no, he never died in prison. He became our president. That's all. He only died once. But for those of us who don't live in South Africa, quite a few of us remember he did actually die more than once, just like Larry Hagman and my ex-roommate's cat.
Yeah, there are other examples too, right? With
lots of other examples,
logos, and even like the Pokemon Pikachu with right.
Yeah, Pikachu's tail, people remember he was yellow or golden yellow with black. They remember black on the tail. That's how we remember it. But then when you look to see the image, it looks funny, it looks strange. And so people redo the image to make it look like what people remember.
Mm-hmm. And so what can we understand from the Mandela effect, or how can we somehow benefit from this awareness in our like everyday life?
Right. And we did a whole special show on Mandela Effect in Brazil for the International Mandela Effect Conference.
Oh.
Yeah, so you might want to check that out. It's
Sure.
on YouTube. The channel is International Mandela Effect Conference, and we spent a whole episode talking only about Mandela effects in Brazil. We are international. We know this is global, and those of us in the International Mandela Effect Conference, we believe that this is the time of great awakening. So we are witnessing reality shifts collectively. So we're seeing that together we're noticing, instead of just me at home noticing I put my keys down in one place, now they've moved. Together, all of us around the world are noticing that there are big changes happening. Some of them are happening in our bodies that are global, such as the kidneys. In America, we had something called the kidney punch. And I did martial arts for many years, 20 years. And so we know that if you punch someone in the lower back, it's very bad because it used to be dangerous. The person could die. And so it was well known. But now, I don't know when it happened, but within the last 10 years, the kidneys on every person on the planet have moved up under the rib cage, much safer. So they're not down low and exposed where they used to be. The heart has moved to the center of our chest. Our bodies are changing. And the people that don't notice this would be, of course, surgeons and doctors. And they would tell us, you're confused. And that's part of the Mandela effect. It doesn't affect everyone the same way. Remember, the observer changes the observation. And so you'll have groups of observers who are noticing Nelson Mandela only died once or he died twice, and observing the kidneys have moved or they've always been safe under the rib cage. So these kinds of things are part of the phenomenon. And the benefit is in this great awakening, when we start noticing, just like with reality shifts, when we notice, okay, things are changing and maybe we're having something to do with this. Maybe it's partly our chaotic mind, and what we need to see, things that would wake us up like, wow, that's weird. I don't remember that logo changing or that movie changing or that statue changing, whatever it may be. Then we start recognizing that we may be having something to do with this, that it could be part of a very gentle wake up. The changes are not usually bad. They're not horrible. They're things like, why would we care if that giant Jesus Christ statue in Brazil is different? It's changed. That was one of the big ones from Brazil. It's like, okay. And people notice it. So if people, I don't want to spoil it, but it's worth watching that episode if you're interested.
I'll put the link in the description.
Good. It's huge. And so when we notice that these are happening and a lot of people around the world are noticing, and there's this sweet spot where it's familiar enough that you're paying attention, but it's also distant enough that it has a chance to change, which is itself a quantum phenomena. Because the closer we are to something, we can lock in with our when we observe. I'm doing like a woodpecker. We have these birds, woodpeckers. They go da 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 da, and it's like check. And when you're checking something that fast, you're locking the quantum state in place. So then you can say, like I feel sick. No, I don't feel sick. I don't feel sick. I don't feel sick. Don't feel sick. I feel well, healthy. So you're checking it in for you. And together, we're doing this subconsciously right now. But I think more and more of us are coming together, like with monthly International Mandela Effect Conference meetings. And this month in May, we'll have Donald Hoffman, the scientist who talks about vision and perception and how everything's a simulation. Yeah. So when we gather together, like we're doing, like your show right now, people are getting the opportunity to ask how good can it get for all of us. And that's what the Mandela Effect can show.
Yeah. And as I hear you speak, I feel like it's definitely part of these expansion in consciousness or this ascension, whatever people call it, because it seems to me that time is experienced differently individually, right? So, and I guess that's to do with presence as well. Like the more mindful you are, the more present you are, your perception of time is different to you or to even like your partner or your friends, because you're experiencing time in a different way. But it seems to me that because this has an effect on the collective, so more and more people are having similar expanded experiences. Would that be
Yes,
right?
that is right. And what I love most is that we can start to learn in our, like in my personal life, I can look at a situation and say, sometimes it looks like a problem, like I might be sick, or our dog looked like he had cataracts because eyes were getting cloudy. And I looked at our family dog, and I just felt like no, like, and I know that sometimes it can look one way, but we know we need him to be clear vision and clear eyed because we love our dog. So I just felt that love for him. And then one by one, other family members came to me and said bad news about the dog. I said, it's his eyes? Yes. And I said, oh, I know sometimes it looks like he has cataracts developing, but we know that that's not the case. So, and then, one by one, each member of the household recognized that's right. And it's a recognition that sometimes it can look like there's a serious problem. I know that's why the Mandela effect is here right now, when the world feels like it's falling apart, when
Mhm.
it looks like these problems are too big for any one person to solve. Not a problem, because sometimes it looks like that. But together with love and staying calm and that expanded sense of self, that community that I talked about, high
Yeah.
vibe and expanded sense of self, then we can lock in the desired reality, like we did with our dog. And so I've done that so many times in my life. So I know that's the ultimate message here that I'm hoping to share with people.
Yeah. Yeah. And I feel like people are definitely feeling the change. Um, a while ago, I was talking about time acceleration because the Mayans said that after the end date, which is 2011 or 2012, they said that there would happen a time acceleration. And so I asked in a class, I asked with a group of people, like, if you feel like time has accelerated. And most people said, I feel like it has, but I don't know how. I can't understand why. And I guess even just the fact that, we're having this interview, you're in the US, I'm in Brazil, other people will be watching this in a different time. Like nowadays, we can just text someone and they will, like, I don't have to write a letter and wait for the letter to get there, right? I
Right.
feel like there are these things that we are experiencing now that's to do with how time is changing, right? How do you feel about this idea of time acceleration?
Yeah, that ties in with ancient indigenous predictions that we would be experiencing this at this time. And it also matches what we're seeing with the Schumann frequencies, where the resonance of the earth itself is accelerating, and we're getting tremendous spikes in that Schumann resonance frequency field. So it's still basically around the 8 hertz healing level that we know it to be. The earth is still there, but then interrupting with tons and tons of super high frequency radiation that's coming through. And as you know, we're in a solar active cycle right now. We are sensitive to these things. And this is just the beginning of a few things. I think our entire solar system is also going through kind of an accelerating, speeding up part of moving through the cosmos. So when you put this all together, you got the Earth, the sun, the solar system, the galaxy. It's like in every place we look, it's like, and there's something going on here. And these are 12,000-year-old cycles that some experts who study these areas of geobiology and how these celestial forces affect our bodies and biology in general, then they would say, of course, this is the time of speeding up. And there's a physicist, Carl Kalaman, who talks specifically about the 9 waves of creation, and he likes to talk about the Mayans, and he goes into great detail about how you can even see this pattern unfolding in Earth history when you know what to look for. So I think there are lots of indicators that are all in agreement. Like, yes, this is a time of great awakening, truly, and it is speeding up of time. That's part of what we're feeling.
Mhm. Beautiful. I have a couple of questions from the audience. I put a question box in my Instagram, and I selected two, if that's okay.
Yes.
I asked them. Okay. Harshita asks, what is the fastest and most effective way to move to a desired timeline?
Yeah. Well, basically, it's I talked about two things today. Just really raising that vibratory frequency. So, getting yourself into a very positive state and asking how good can it get is a good prompt to start guiding yourself upward if you're not already there. And then basically for a quantum jump, you want the ultimate access to the ultimate energy source. And I'm making a little point here. I'm just showing the perennial philosophy of all world religions, all spiritual paths coming together at the culmination point of zero entropy. So now we even can include our atheists here, because even people who say there's no God, but they would agree that there is this point where there's this idea anyway, that there's zero entropy. And that would be this kind of infinite eternity right there. And it's conceivable, therefore it exists. So if you can say like, okay, we're all talking about the same thing, that's where the energy comes from. And if you're spiritual, then you can believe that's God, whichever path you're on. I'm pointing out they converge, they come together. And philosopher Leibniz talks about that. And he's the one that first came up with the idea. And then Aldous Huxley popularized it, called it the perennial philosophy. But if you look at it just from a purely mathematical standpoint, it makes sense. So it's like, okay, that exists. And if you want to feel it in your heart, that's what I recommend for best results. Really feel just start. What I love to do is I'll just prompt myself, like, okay, I want to make connection with this ultimate energy source, God, cosmos, universe, creator, whatever you want to call it. And therefore I ask, where did everything come from? Like this beautiful clothing that I wear, where did this come from? Well, humans made it, but how did they make it? Well, there were sheep involved. Okay, where did the sheep come from? Well, they're on the earth, blah, blah, blah. You just go back and you're back at the ultimate source. So, and what happens to me on this questioning process, which sounds childish, it takes me to awe and reverence when I really get to that point where I realize, oh my gosh, everything that I love the most and everything I take for granted that I live with, that I depend on, it's all a gift from source, from God. For me personally, then I'm just like, I'm plugged in. Then I've got my energy. Yeah. So for making that quantum jump, you need to have that, and then complete alignment within oneself. So what I'm visualizing, like this is my reality. I'm going to live this way, and feeling it in my heart and that connection with the divine, and then knowing that I need this. You need to know you need it. And if you don't yet know that you need it, then expand your sense of self so that you're in service at a level where it matches what you're giving is what you need to be in that state. So it requires, the way I do it, it's not some cheap black magic trick. No, it's a very spiritual practice, and it requires becoming the best that you can be.
Yeah. So you would recommend also like visualization, meditation. That's something yes. that I do, is like visualizing a desirable timeline, and then, like you said,
yes.
in your heart, and maybe let it go too, right? Like
yeah. Yeah, you can totally let go. Some of the coolest reality shifts and quantum jumps happen that way for me, where I just let it go. So acceptance and being neutral is super important. It's a very this is an interesting topic, because here people sometimes feel that they want something and they're constantly feeling bad, like, well, I don't have this. You need to move into acceptance with what seems to be. It's a very tricky thing, because at the same time as you acknowledge that what you don't like is what is, because we're humans, we like to improve things. You need to be in that beautiful balanced point where you accept it. It looks like that, and I'm just gently asking and knowing that I need to see at some point when it's workable that this will no longer be the case, whatever that problem may be. Like I just went through, personally, I went through long COVID. So for me, recovering from that was definitely part of this journey. Just feeling like even when I was in the middle of it, I was like, well, I don't see any way out. So I accept it. But I know when I ask, how good can this get? I get an answer. There will be a silver lining here. There will be a secret. Something will be revealed that can be very beneficial for everyone, which it turned out to be true. So.
Yeah. And do you think that sometimes our conditioned, programmed perception of time also sort of like gets in the way, because we want, like, you want to feel really good next tomorrow, and you're doing the work and you're asking and you're visualizing, and tomorrow you're not that good, or you're a little bit good. Do you feel like that kind of gets in the way, and then people sort of give up on this idea of the practice because our
Yes.
idea of time is like, we want things now, especially like in the Western culture, like we're very much quick and we want things fast, right?
Right. So for my example of being so sick, I had hundreds of symptoms. I felt like I'd aged 30 years overnight. So this is the long COVID problem that I was in the middle of between February 2020 and summer of the middle of 2021. So that was like 18 months. And that time period, yes, there were times that I felt that it was extremely debilitating and demoralizing, and it seemed dark, but I never lost my faith. For me personally, that energy source was the key. Just knowing like, okay, there's something in this, it'll be good. And I trust the whole process. So I'll accept that everything I thought I was doing in 2020, that's not happening. None of it, or most of it isn't. Okay, that's all right. And worse than that, it's like I'm falling apart. And it feels like there are times when I think, am I dying? It feels pretty bad. But I never lost faith. And so being in that accepting place of, okay, I accept this, whatever it may be. And if part of how good can it get means I get better at some point, whenever that is. So I become very patient in this, and I recommend that. Become very patient.
Yeah.
So instead of because maybe part of how good it can get, maybe the timing matters. I think it does.
Yeah. And I think if there's one thing that 2020 wanted to teach us is patience.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Would you say that a good practice would be to do experiments with like quote unquote small things instead of visualizing the big things? Because something that I see with a lot of the people that I work with is that they're always, when you think about like jumping into a timeline or visualizing something, they always think of like the big picture, the house, the marriage, the career change. And that may be far, right? That may be far from our perspective of time. Would you suggest that we try small things, something that you visualize for the day or for tomorrow, so that we can sort of build that faith and actually see some evidence?
Yeah, well, actually, anything is possible, but the amount that we believe it's possible matters. So this is where listening to oneself plays a huge role. So if a person is visualizing whatever they first thought they'd visualize, and it's the big thing, then part of this exercise needs to be listening to their gut. How do they really feel about this? So if they were to be honest, and don't lie with the cosmos, don't lie to the universe. It's a participatory universe. It knows whether you believe in this or not. If you don't believe in it, it's like, ha, 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 like, oh, they're telling a joke, cute, and that's not what we were going for.
Yeah.
It's not that they're laughing at us. It's just like, oh, they don't believe it, but they're asking for it. That's adorable. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's adorable. So if you don't believe it, then you need to keep adjusting until you're catching up with your subconscious. Mm-hmm. What you need runs the show. The subconscious runs the show. And so that's where it will believe or not believe what you've got in mind. So if it's too big, then take something small that you can believe in. Start there. Yes.
Yeah, because we need to believe it to see it, but the ego usually works the other way around, right? We
Yes.
see it to believe it. Right. The next question is, Alex asks, what is your understanding of time travel?
Yeah, that's so interesting. I could feel this question coming in before I even said it, which is an experience of it right there. It's so funny because I was just starting, I saw before you even read the question or said the name. Perfect example of it. I know I can't prove this, but it's so funny.
I
It's funny to
totally
me.
believe it.
So I'm laughing like, oh, that's good. Yeah, so that was wow. Yeah, so I gave a talk for the International Mandela Effect Conference about the voyage of the Mandela effect. And I've got a video on that where I talk about 3 people's experiences talking to their future selves. I'm one of them. And so what I was thinking of when I'm laughing is my experience. When I was 16, I just gone to bed and in my own bedroom. I was the only one there. The lights are off. I'm in bed, about to fall asleep, except there's an interruption, and there's this radiant older version of me float walking out of my mirror door closet across the room, talking to me. I'm talking out loud. She's thinking to me telepathically. She's very reassuring, very loving, very sweet. She goes to my desk, removes something from the lower drawer. I can barely believe this is happening. It's like, is this a dream? And then she leaves. Except then my door opens to my bedroom and my dad's there, my father, asking, "Are you okay?" I said, "Yes." Like, why is he here? I heard voices. Like he heard my voice. I'm like, oh, right. I don't. Everything's fine. And I'm like, what the heck? Anyway, the next morning I wake up. I'm still thinking I must have been partly asleep. I wake up and I check in that bottom drawer, underneath the drawer where I was the only one who knew. I'd hidden some notes from my boyfriend. They're gone. They're gone from the desk. And I still can't believe what I just saw, because that's got to be a dream or something. So I run into my sister's bedroom. She's not awake yet. And I accuse her of having stolen these notes. And she's like, I did not steal the notes. So I believe her. But then all I'm left with is, so that means I time traveled. A future version of me came into my room and removed something from my desk that only I knew about. I'm the only one that knew where they were. So that was my experience. I've had others, but that one was the earliest version for me and quite striking. So time travel, there are many components to this, and I go into it in that talk I give, like how is it possible with the physics? What past are we affecting? Like, will I ever be that future me that does that? Maybe, maybe not. It's not necessary, and it's kind of a complicated. As soon as you get into time, it's a very interesting thing because they're, yeah.
Yeah,
So,
I'm thinking when you have those experiences that are more maybe spiritual, transcendental, or even like lucid dreaming, or like that you actually go to a past lifetime or a past moment in this lifetime or a future timeline, would that be considered time travel too?
it could be. And deja vu, where we have a dream and then later we experience it. It's like we're going outside the normal, what we think of as linear time. Time is not necessarily linear at all. It isn't linear for the ultimate 0 point, God, the source, the creator, because there it's that experience, that awareness of time is infinity is right there. There is no entropy whatsoever. So it's very interesting to think of all of these topics. And it kind of mind-blowing too. So yeah, those could be examples of time travel. I think when we think of time travel, and also what happened to me, where I'm getting unexpectedly a vision of my future self moving. I just saw it, and right before you asked that question, I'm like, why am I seeing this? And then there's the question.
What's incredible about your story is that something that's matter, right, actually moved, right? Because when you have a meditation and you go into a transcendental state, that's something that's happening within your consciousness. But in your case, it's like literally something was moved out of place. So it's like big confirmation that this happened.
Right. Yeah, it was huge. and it really grabbed my attention, and there was no other way to explain it. I really tried every other way to explain it.
Mhm.
There
So
was no other.
would you suggest anybody who's interested in some kind of time traveling, would you suggest hypnotherapy or past life regression or meditation, anything like that?
Yeah, it depends on motive. Obviously, I would prefer to work with people who are taking whatever they're choosing to do and making sure that it's really for the best for all concerned, keeping it in that spiritual path. Time travel can get, the reason I mention it is sometimes we want to fix mistakes of the past, and we think something horrible has happened. And instead of getting the opportunity to do the spiritual inner work and healing and forgiveness that needs to happen, these are important things that need to happen. So I don't take any of this trivially, is what I'm saying. To me, this is very important to be reverent about oneself, about even one's possible pasts and one's possible futures.
Yeah. And I feel like the awareness of the present moment too is so important, like knowing that like whatever actions you take you take today, whatever decisions you make today in this present moment will affect the future or the past, because for us the present is really all we have, right? Even if we time travel or if we do a past life regression, it will give us information about something that we can change today. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, we have access through that. It gets back to those two things I talked about there, like your level of, like your spiritual height, shall we say? Like when you can hit gratitude, that's pretty good. Reverence, that's really good. And you're starting to feel like, wow, I'm in just awe of this sense of creator is right here. That's the ultimate reality. Nothing else is really quite real. And when you get to that level, I'm like, okay, I've got the energy. And then you expand your sense of self. And that's where things become possible. Because when we think that we're limited, then we are limited. And we've been told that we're limited. People have told us you can't change the past. That's not been my experience. I've seen things that clearly have indicated that I and others have changed the past, and that this is happening all the time. And now we've got physics experiments that show us that this happens as well.
Beautiful. That's a fascinating topic. I have a few last questions for you. I call them fun and deep. So I'll just ask and you can just say whatever comes to your mind. So the first question is, in a few words, what's your definition of time?
I'd go with what Carlo Rovelli talks about, because I just read his brilliant book about time, and it's moving away from that zero entropy. So moving away from, moving into entropy, where things start happening. When they happen, when there's entropy, then we experience time. And so at the rate that we go is the rate of consciousness, that size of who we are is our experience of that.
Beautiful. If you could shift something, I know we all can shift realities, as you said it in the episode, but if you could shift something sort of big in this 3D reality that we're in right now, what would it be?
Oh, well, currently the thing I'm looking at is spike proteins and amyloidosis, proteinopathy. So I would be having a wish for the world that all of us can be minimally affected by what looks like sort of a slow ticking time bomb situation. I'd like to visualize for all of us, and everyone can join me in this, that the damage from that spike protein and anything like it will be minimal. And then we can throw in world peace as well.
Beautiful. Imagine that all the books in the world are just going to be deleted forever, and you could save only one. Which book would you save and why?
Oh my gosh.
That's a difficult question, I know.
Wow. Wow. I think one Well, I think it's going to be The Untethered Soul by Michael Singer.
Mm-hmm.
And you may wonder why that one. Because it's a startup, it's like a bootstrap. I would pick that one for it's one of my top 10 books anyway, but I'd pick that one because it's the one that you start learning that you are not your thoughts, you are not your feelings. And reading the book is to experience the process of becoming conscious.
Yeah, I love that. Untethered Soul. And maybe we could put the surrender experiment in it as well.
Yes.
Cheat a little bit. What is the one thing that people would be surprised to know about you?
Well, if they don't already know that I have done martial arts, usually that's quite a shock. It's like, what? So I think that surprises people. But it really brings together mind, body, and spirit. It's all about world peace, actually. It's the martial art of Kuksul Wan, which is global. I haven't been able to go to the dojang and practice recently because I had long COVID, but one day I'll be back.
Awesome. This question is called Three Truths. It's actually from Lewis Howes, but I love the question, so I always ask my guests, and it's a hypothetical question. So imagine many years from now, you're about to make the transition from this physical realm into the spiritual one. And then all of the work that you've done, all of the books, the articles, the videos, they have been deleted. And then you have a piece of paper in front of you and a pen, and you can write 3 truths that will be sort of your legacy that will live on. What would be your 3 truths?
Well, this is tough. Narrowing it down to 3. It's like there's so many good ones.
Yeah.
Well, I think one that is it just for me or is it for other people? Because ones that are, it's like me learning as a soul has been so interesting. I didn't used to know that my life is not just my own, that it's so much more than that. And I hope that I always remember that after this life, that I never forget that again, that and I think that's probably true for all of us. Mm-hmm. Another big one personally for me that I don't know if it makes sense to others, but it's the idea that it's only ever me and God. It's like, that's all that's real. And what we think are problems, that's nothing. God's always bigger. Mm-hmm. So those are 2 really big ones. And then love is all that there is, But these go together.
I love that. And I usually say love is all there is. I love that. Really.
Oh, seriously? Oh my gosh.
I actually have a song called Love is All There Is. I haven't published it yet, but I'm planning.
Oh,
yeah.
I love it. That's so amazing. I'm getting goosebumps on the goosebumps.
Yay. Maybe we're just jumping timelines, and there is a timeline where I've already published it. Cynthia, just before I let you go, how can people work with you? Do you have any projects in the pipeline?
Sure. Yeah, I mentioned that I'm involved with the International Mandela Effect Conference. I'm one of the founders, and we do monthly. Usually it's one of the last middle of the week days at the end of each month. And there's a YouTube channel there. And then you can sign up subscribe to that newsletter at imec.world. And then I've got my own website with my own newsletter, RealityShifters.com. And I'm on social media on Instagram and Twitter and Facebook and YouTube. And then I do a monthly newsletter. So those are, I think the easiest ways to contact me is through my website. But I'm mentioning the other one as well, imec.world also. That's and awesome. RealityShifters.com.
I will, as usual, I'll put all the links in the description below so that people can reach out to you. And Cynthia, I want to acknowledge you for your joy and your smile. And I want to thank you for being here and doing the work that you're doing to help raise the vibration of the planet. So thank you.
Thank you, Will.
Thank you so much for watching or listening to this episode. If you'd like to learn more about Cynthia's work, please visit her website, www.realityshifters.com, and follow her on YouTube, Instagram. As usual, you can find all the links in the show's notes. I've also put the links to the talks that she mentioned in this conversation. And once again, if this has brought you value, please subscribe to my podcast and share it with your friends who may benefit from this episode too. As always, keep shining your light, keep your heart open, and let love lead the way. I love you. See you in the next episode.